Welcome everyone to Ecom 2021. If this isn't your first session, welcome back. If this is your first session, welcome. My name is Alex Campanolo. I work for EcoSchools and I'll be facilitating the meeting today. So to start the session, I have a land acknowledgement that I will be reading. So the land acknowledgement is based in where the conference was originally planned to be hosted, and that would be in Toronto in the GTA. Although, with that said, I'm facilitating from Peterborough, Ontario, which the traditional name is Nokojiwanong. It's Anishinaabe territory, which is part of the Williams Treaty, Treaty 20. So if I can share my screen. Where the heck? Okay, people can see this. That's a thumb. Yeah. Okay. Gosh, I'm used to Google Slides. Okay, so we acknowledge the traditional territory upon which the conference is being hosted. For many thousands of years, the Huron-Wendat and the Penton First Nations, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Seneca, and most recently, the Mississaugas, Michisage of the Credit, have sought to walk gently on this land. This territory is covered by Treaty 13 and the Mississaugas of the Credit, as well as by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe and allied nations to peacefully share and care for the lands and resources around the Great Lakes. This acknowledgement signals our desire to seek a new relationship with the original peoples of this land, one based on honor and deep respect, and is a starting point to remind us all to enact this work in our personal and professional lives. Thank you. Just need to get back to my notes. So thanks very much for your respect during that. I'd also like to introduce our Zoom host for today's session. This is Alexa Nitsis, otherwise known as the captain of the AV club circa 2009 in whatever high school she attended. That's just an assumption. I also have two lovely presenters. And if you are the presenter I'm speaking about, if you could just raise your hand and wave to signify that you are in fact the person I'm speaking about. First, we have Karen Stelling, who's been teaching with the TDSB for a whopping 15 years and is currently the Assistant Curriculum Leader Department Head of Science at Riverdale Collegiate. Karen has a broad range of experience teaching chemistry, science, geography, and e-learning in grades 9 through 12. She's the leader of Riverdale's EcoSchools program, which is currently at Platinum. As somebody who works at EcoSchools, I can vouch for the fact that attaining Platinum is no small feat. You are among the upper 5 to 10% of all EcoSchools that contribute to the platform. So big ups for achieving Platinum. Karen also enjoys taking secondary students outdoors and is trying to incorporate environmental education in the new secondary teaching structure. Thank you, Karen. We also have Dan Kunanec, who teaches green industries, technological design, and hospitality and tourism at Don Mills Collegiate. His 20-year journey as an educator connects his past experience in industry with the current and future successes of his students. Urban possibilities, local indigenous connections, and an overall sense of community wellness and well-being drive his classroom pursuits. So participants, there are a few resources that I'll share in the chat for your reference. Please open them before the session ends because you won't be able to access them afterward. And if you have any comments or questions for the presenters, please add them to the chat. I'll address those at the end of each respective presentation. Thanks.
All right, so I guess it's me, right? Just share my screen. Can everybody see that? Yeah. All right, so as Alex said, I do a lot with EcoSchools, and as you might know, there's a lot of components of EcoSchools that makes it pretty difficult to do in these times when we're online. But one thing that I'm going to talk to you today about is an initiative that I've done before called Freedom Friday, where we go outside every Friday. This relates mainly to the eco-literacy section of EcoSchools, which I think even in this strange time, I don't know where everybody is from in this session, but I know here in Toronto, we don't have school right now, so we're doing it all virtually. So I'll try and, pop in some tips of how to convert this to into our virtual world. All right, and there's my contact information if you ever want to email me. All right, so just a little bit about me. This is me outside with some students. I work at Riverdale. I have a broad range of subjects. I'm mostly teaching chemistry right now and earth and space science, which lends itself to more of the Freedom Friday aspect, but it's something that I've more cohesively done in the geography, grade 9 geography. So most of the examples I'm going to share with you today are from grade 9 geography, but can be easily designed to change with whatever curriculum that you have. And I know for some of us, I know in Toronto, we've been teaching when we are in person, we've been teaching for 4 hours at a time. So I think a lot of teachers are trying to get outside, even if it's just for a break, to just get out there. My school is right downtown, and it has virtually no school grounds. So you can see here, there's sidewalk, bunch of paved stuff. And then there's this completely locked and fenced off yard. A lot of trees have also been cut down due to the emerald ash borer. So we don't really have that school ground. So sort of the lens that I'm going to talk about a little bit today is trying to find, and sort of the theme of this conference, I think, is finding that nature in urban settings, because something I try and teach my students is you don't have to be up in, Algonquin Park or in the complete wilderness to appreciate nature. Nature is where we are, and we can find it even in the most paved of locations. So what is Freedom Friday? So on Freedom Friday, my first sort of tip for success, I kind of came up with the idea. I think I was taking environmental education part 1 AQ at OISE, which is amazing if you ever get the chance to take those AQs. And I told my students on the first day of school that we were doing this. And so that was my sort of accountability piece, because I find sometimes when you think about this stuff, it seems a little bit overwhelming and you think, well, I don't know how I'm going to do this. But if you just say, I'm going to do this, then they'll make you do it, because they'll keep reminding you, well, it's Friday. What about Freedom Friday? So that's like step 1, is just saying that you're going to do it. And I know at TDSB, we have, that's Toronto District School Board. Again, I don't know who the audience is. We have what's called a walking excursion form. So that is a permission form that allows students to go on any kind of walking excursion without having like a signed permission form. So it's not the same as a field trip. A field trip is something that you do need all of the paperwork. And right now during COVID, we aren't allowed to do them. You're only allowed to walk where you can walk during class time. So that's sort of something, that a little logistical thing that you can figure out based on your own school board. But if you have something like a walking excursion form, if you're allowed to do it inside class time, then do it, because it's a lot less paperwork and hassle, I guess, to get it done. And say if the weather is horrible or something, or if you have, some other great activity plan that matches with what you were doing the class before, maybe you can put off Freedom Friday, or maybe if there's a PA day or something, you can have like Freedom Wednesday. They always like that when they get it on a different day. So just one tip is with technology, just don't fight it. So use it. So this is one of my students taking a picture of a puddle. And so what I have them do is use Instagram. So I encourage them to maybe make an Instagram for school. So that way they're not, I have a school Instagram. I don't really use Instagram anyway, but I have a school Instagram. So that way, you know, it seems like it's, you know, for school, and that they are more encouraged to use it because they might be concerned about, you know, what their friends think, although I think their friends think you get to go outside every Friday, but that way they can take their pictures and you can have a unique hashtag that matches your course code and whatever the thing is you're looking for. And then when you come back into the classroom, you can pull that up on a projector and look through everybody's pictures. And that way also, if a student doesn't have the technology, they can always participate with a partner or something like that, if we're ever allowed to like be within 6 feet of one another again. So the first one I ever did, I just stayed on school grounds and I had them do connections between humans and the natural environment. And so they could take pictures of whatever they wanted that explored that. And there's no captions. Sometimes they can put captions if they want to, but it's mainly just the hashtag. And so here are some pictures of that. And they're amazing. These pictures are so beautiful. And you never know what they're gonna come up with. Another kind of fun thing, again, if we ever are like in the same room with other humans, would be, I've brought these up at parent-teacher interview and showed the parents the photos that their children were taking, and they really liked it. So like this is just the alleyway behind the school, has a flower growing there. I had another session that was about rain. So you're a raindrop, you're falling on school grounds, what happens to you? And it was sort of the physical geography part of things. And this is a picture of a drain. It happened to rain one of the times that I did it, like right before we went out. So here's some other just amazing shots just taken from kids' phones that are exploring their connections. Here's another one that's actually a reflection. The top is the puddle and the reflection of the buildings in the basketball court in the puddle. Like I said, we're really don't have a huge school ground. So I like to start small with, you know, just doing really like establishing the rules of Freedom Friday, of these excursions, because you could have, I mean, back in the time when we had normal school, we would have like 30 grade 9s. And so part of the things I would establish is, you know, when you're leaving the school, not to, you know, sound like it's a party, because we can't, you know, if we're disturbing every class when we leave, that could be a problem. And because we're in such a urban space, the sidewalks are only so big. And so you'll have, you know, people in wheelchairs or people with strollers or just regular people walking. They have to all make sure that you're making way for the community. So if you start on the school grounds, it can kind of set the expectations of how we are when we're as a group outside. And then once you do a few on the school grounds, you can go somewhere farther if that's available to you. And this same thing would work in a more rural setting as well, except for being more probably more natural environment than what I've got here. So we have this park that's 7-minute walk away, and we go to Greenwood Park, and we did one sort of bunch of things where we were looking at landscape through different lenses. And so we had the landscape as nature, and again, these are all taken by students. So that's, you know, a tree. We had it as habitat. I don't know if you can see the spider web with a bunch of dead bugs in it on the side of one of the buildings at the park. Oops, is that it? I thought there's more pictures. Anyway, you could have landscape as various things. So I've done system, habitats, nature, I've done culture. We're right on Gerrard Street. I don't know if you're familiar with Toronto, but there's on our culture walk, we did I think we found like 30 different cultures represented in the local stores just by walking. I've also we had a grocery store nearby as well, and take a picture of a product and then find out where it's from and map its journey, if it's like a more processed thing, or, you know, some kids picked like an avocado or something like that. So there's all these things that you can do really, really easily without much, I guess, preparation on your part. And I think that the key is to being pretty comfortable not knowing what they're gonna do, because, and I think that also empowers them to use their own lens and their own voice to find these things in the actual world. Because we even did things like, you know, extended it to finding a place that you wanted to, it's the livable communities part of the geography course, where they had to find a real place like near our school that they wanted to change for people their age. And so it might be like an abandoned storefront, or it might be a green space, or it could be anything, but it had to be a real place that they had that they had to use. So again, some tips. So start small, use the school grounds, and don't be intimidated. You don't have to know what they're gonna say. You don't have to know what's gonna happen. Really, you have to have the safety under control, and that's you trust in your class. But I feel like if you do it right away, that does build the trust, because they like it and they want to do it. And so they don't want to, like, I've never had a kid like wander off or anything like that, because they know, like, well, we'll be sitting in class and that's going to be no fun. So that's really the only thing that you have to be in control of. The rest is really, don't limit yourself with what you're expecting. Like, if you overthink it, you might just not do it, because you might be kind of too afraid to try it. So don't overthink it. And think with the end in mind for the products that you're creating to showcase the findings. So I've done here like a photo essay or like a scrapbook type of thing. And I don't even necessarily evaluate it every year. It depends on the year and how much we end up doing, but it can lead to some like, well, beautiful art even, but just them knowing that their lens is important, which I think is good. In the virtual world, now that we're all online, these are just a few things that I've tried. Having students go out and find something for a picture of something for an analysis. So, you know, I've done it in Earth and Space Science, where they're finding some sort of evidence of geologic processes, where like some students might not be able to get anywhere where you can see much. There's a lot of ravines around us, which has good stuff to take pictures of, but maybe it's even like a crack in the sidewalk or something like that, that is showing that process. You could even have them do, I haven't tried this, but have them do Freedom Friday asynchronously with a hashtag, or having them complete a nature journal of just like, you know, make sure you're outside even for 1 minute, and what are you like noticing about that. And I think it's just good for overall sort of health as well. And that's sort of it. I put the Twitter and the Instagram because the ones that I'm not usually the one taking the picture, and there's virtually nothing on Twitter, but I don't know, it's there if you want it. So I guess maybe Alex, should I look at the chat or?
Sure. I mean, if you had a direct message, I didn't have one sent to everyone. So if there's something in the public, we do have some. First of all, before we even get to that, thank you so much for such a fascinating presentation, especially from someone of my perspective. The things that were the intersection of science and art is definitely right up my alley. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing. we have a question here that says, hey, Karen, have you found any solutions for economic disparity within the class? For example, kids whose families maybe can't afford phones for contributing.
Yes, I've had that, and what I've done before is use the school iPads. Another thing that can be a barrier depending on your school is the Wi-Fi. Sometimes it just wasn't working well in the rooms that I was in, and so they were having difficulty uploading. So I'd let them like walk out into the hall, or sometimes it would be maybe we discuss it on the next class. So if they did have a device that needed better Wi-Fi, they could do that, somewhere else, like, or take it to a different part of the school and get it uploaded. Also, I think like it's changed. I think I started doing this in maybe 2014 or 2015. And I find now more and more students are having Instagram versus not, or even they've moved on from, maybe Instagram's for old people now. I know Facebook is, I think. I don't know. But I think that like encouraging them to have their own account for school is good, but also because it doesn't have to even be from their device. The other thing I've done too is just given them mine, like just like say, tell me when you want it and I'll upload it for you. So
incredibly trusting.
well, I'm like right there.
So we have a short follow-up question to that. So for some folks in the winter, sometimes they'll have problems with kids who don't have proper outerwear. So is there any strategies you have to recommend in addressing that?
Just I remind them a lot. I know sometimes the outerwear thing is also due to economic disparity, and it can also be due to so cool you're frozen high school mentality. And so I always just remind them, like, I'm a parent, so I kind of get like, another thing, actually, does anyone have to go to the bathroom? Go to the bathroom now, this kind of stuff before you head out. But I try to remind them, on Fridays, we are going out, bring your coats to class. And I do always give them the opportunity to get them. Even though they're supposed to have them and be ready, there's always kids who forget. And so I tell them, I let them do it because otherwise they're just gonna go in and freeze. Yeah, so you gotta, yeah. And that's, I think, the thing, you gotta just do it. And also in a regular class setting, it's not usually that long. Another thing I meant to mention, when we went to the park, a lot of the times when we're doing the landscape through versus different lenses, it's a pretty big park. And so I kind of let them loose and have a meeting time for them to come back. And again, with the phones, you can say set a timer for 20 minutes or whatever. But one thing that I noticed that I really liked was once they were done, or even in the middle of their exploration of whatever lens we were looking at, is that they would play. They would go on the swings. They would, there's a kind of statue in the park that's a memorial to a child that passed away. And so I'd often like talk to kids about that, and they would just, it's their community too. At that school, everybody lives really close, generally. So I just kind of liked that it really was Freedom Friday. Like they could get the task done and go look at the dogs in the off leash area, or go, climb a hill that they found, or go down the slide. And as long as, I think the only thing to be mindful of is there's like little ones at the park, just reminding them, there are little ones here, which I didn't ever have a problem, because I think they had their freedom to do that sort of free play.
Wow, you are so trusting of your students. It's really quite refreshing to hear, actually, whether it's trusting with them using their own devices, or trusting them to, go out into downtown Toronto, see in a half hour. Yeah, it's quite lovely. So we have another question here. Do you have any tips for a school starting out their first year with EcoSchools? So getting student or staff buy-in, some good projects to start with.
I'm lucky enough to have a school, like when I first started out, I'd have to recruit people all the time. I felt like I was very much on my own. So I guess tips would be make friends with your custodian. I've had custodians like see me walking down the hall and turn around and like run. But I've also had amazing ones, including my one now. But make friends with your custodian, and it really helps to have the admin support as well. It's great to get younger kids involved at first, because I found in my first few years, I was always recruiting grade 12s, and they'd always they'd be fantastic, and then they would graduate and you'd be left with nothing. And once you do get that sort of generational team of students, make sure you are actively planning the passing of the torch throughout the year. So get those younger students in on the audits or the various aspects of it. And I would say also, and Dan and I were actually talking about this when we met earlier this week, don't get too worried about like all the points and all the categories. You're for sure doing lots of this stuff anyway. And I've always done it really kid driven, whatever the kids are into and the initiatives that they wanted to do, then do those and then fit it in where you can. And then once the team sort of builds momentum and you get some more people on board, that's when you can start kind of narrowing down on a couple of the EcoSchools points where you're realizing you're not very strong. Like for me, I'm probably the complete opposite of Dan, where like we have no school grounds. Our school grounds section is weak. We built a living wall in our atrium because we didn't have any, like we have none. So it's just like work with what you have, and the EcoSchools people are amazing and they only are there to build you up and support you. So don't feel like, oh, I'm gonna fail or something, like I'm not gonna do well. They're only there to help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Seeing a question, would kids be allowed to go in groups if COVID wasn't there, like alone out on a Freedom Friday? I don't let them go like by themselves, but like I walk with them to the park and then I let them loose and I try and make sure everybody has someone to be with. But I'm kind of like in the same vicinity. I don't say like, go to that other park or something by yourself.
Amazing. Yeah, thanks so much. I was curious about the COVID connection as well this year. How that, I guess we have maybe a minute, if you could elaborate a little bit, just out of my own curiosity, with how COVID has impacted the initiative this year.
The EcoSchools initiative?
Or the initiative you spoke about in your presentation.
Yeah, it's been tough. I taught a section of grade 10. I've been also teaching some entirely virtual courses as well. So I taught a section of grade 10 science, which has a climate change unit, which is awesome. And we went outside a lot and did things outside because we had 4-hour chunks, and it was kind of nice with the smaller groups to do that. But I feel like EcoSchools wise, like we're kind of not doing anything. We're doing eco-literacy, but I mean, my main, like the president of the club is entirely in a virtual school that's not even our school at the moment, and we're kind of just like at our breaking point. So we're kind of pausing the whole initiative this year in terms of like the audit process and things like that.
Totally, yeah. And with some of I've checked in with a few schools, and it's a very, very common comment people have been making is tons of challenges with trying to get EcoSchools this year.
It's been tough. I think though the outside part, like everybody's going outside at my school, because you're not allowed to take off your mask inside, and you're not even really allowed to take off your mask outside anymore. But like that's the time where you could have a snack or something. And so I've done stuff, in chemistry class where it's kind of near the end of class and we'll be outside and I'll just say like, let's just stay out here and I'll teach you from here. It's not as like, you know, well thought out as the geography ones, but at least they could just be out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Karen. This has been a really informative Q&A, and then following your fabulous presentation. Thank you so much. We have a double header today with our session. So we have Dan coming on for the back half here. I have a handful of resources from Dan to share in the chat. I'm also going to share my screen and put up Dan's slides. Oh, Karen, everyone in the chat is thanking you. If you can't see that, they're really showing you some love.
All good?
So we actually see the slides as a presenter view. I don't know if maybe you could enlarge it.
Yeah, seeing the next slide.
You can see.
Yeah, sorry guys, 1 second.
I appreciate what you're going through because you're doing it for me. Thank you.
Yeah.
While you're doing that, Karen, that was amazing. And I'm so glad you and I got to speak this week in a pretty hectic time, and just do a compare and contrast between what you're doing at Riverdale and what I'm doing at Don Mills. And you know, we definitely have some similarities. We have some definite differences as well. So I think you made the point a couple of times. Obviously, we're both, you know, Toronto schools. You don't have a lot of green space where we do. And I happen to be at a school, which is a high school connected to a middle school. So we basically have twice the campus. And we're in a planned community from the 50s that was really designed around green space. So we're very, very lucky. All good, Alex?
Yeah, I think so. Can everyone see the full thing now? All right, let's do it.
Great, thank you. So yes, the Don Mills community, if you're familiar with Toronto, and it's right by the DVP in Lawrence, that's kind of our exit, and right near the shops at Don Mills, which a lot of people know very well. And I've been at Don Mills CI long enough to remember the old shops, or the old Don Mills mall before it was not open. So it's quite an amazing area, right by the Don Valley Parkway, and very close to sort of Sunnybrook Park. So lots of greenery, and it's beautiful. But we do recognize that we are in the city, and we try to do everything as urban based as possible. So this is just a little caption sort of overall of what we have at the school. Okay, Alex, next, thanks. I'm gonna move along with you.
Okay.
I think you skipped over the one just before. There you go. Yeah, this is our earlier ones. This is a pond. Most high schools have an enclosed courtyard, and a lot of them are quite derelict. And this was something that very early on I was asked to take over by at that point, one of our great head custodians, and we've had a few. And I think Karen made an amazing point about making friends with your custodians. And we took this over, and this was really integral for us because we really worked on our design. So my background is in design and construction. I worked in that area before I became a teacher. So my background's a little different. You know, I have that sort of industrial business sort of approach to classrooms, a lot of project management that goes on. We're quite entrepreneurial. And we realized pretty quickly if we wanted to do some of these projects, we couldn't get the money from the schools or the school board. And so we really started to look outward. So grants became an integral part of what we do. And so this was our first real attempt at a major design presentation associated with securing a grant. This happened to be a TD Friends of the Environment grant. That was even before it was TD Canada Trust. So that's how long ago it was. And this is a big deal for us because we realized that not only could we write grant proposals and incorporate them into our curriculum, but that we were successful in getting them. So grade 10s and 11s were successful in getting grants. It's a big deal. So I teach technological subjects. I'm tech design, green industries, hospitality, and tourism. So we're very experiential, very hands-on, and we're sort of full process. And so we love this pond because it's a big part of what we do, and students are able to get out there all the time. Next, Alex. Great. So this is a greenhouse that we fought for about 10 years, which means I was told no for 10 years. So it's a really important part of who we are as teachers and champions in our school. If we're told no, that's fine. Tell me why, and tell me what the hoops are. I'll jump through them next time. And so this was a 10-year process. And sometimes, you know, other people's failures get in your way. The reason we didn't get a greenhouse was because local schools around us had a greenhouse and they were taking care of it. And so that's why you can't have nice things. So that was a bit of an issue for us. I didn't give up on that. And the greenhouse is now an integral part of what we do. Next. And so we use it for everything. If you come to the greenhouse 1 week to the next, it changes. We've got living wall systems. We have all kinds of fruits and vegetables in there. But most important for us, it's raising seedlings at this point that we use in our urban farm, which you will see in a few minutes. Our seedling capacity, we've had almost 6,000 seedlings growing in that space at the same time, which all get planted. We've changed some of that process, but it's an amazing place, especially an oasis to go into for students that are struggling a little bit. You know, having a bad day, it's amazing. They'll show up to the classroom from another classroom, teacher lets them go, and they come in, they say things like, can I just prune the plants for a while? So it's quite an amazing space. I can see some questions coming in, which is great. We'll answer those at the end of the presentation. Next. This is a big deal for us. This is an aquaponics system. You may know about them. When we started this, it was pretty new technology as far as building. We were very early pioneers. This is early 2000s. And we designed and built this to our own specifications. We did it in a room, which is a storage room that housed basically the motor for our dust collector system in the wood shop. And it made sense to us because we were building it and designing it as a reaction to natural disasters shortly after Hurricane Katrina. And it was like, how does a community get back on their feet? How does a family get back on their feet? Small village units. What do you have after a natural disaster? Well, you have the strength of and knowledge of your community. You have building materials that probably came from something else. What you need is a good design and an ability. So we kind of created a system where a government can, you know, send out food grade rubber liners, instructions, fish fry, and seeds, and move from there. So we've had this running since early 2000s. And if you can go next, Alex, you'll see sort of some of the success. Upper middle, you see tilapia, which is pretty the standard fish for aquaponic systems. We have now changed our whole system over and changed our filtration. So innovation is very, very important for us. We now are raising all native species fish and mostly native species plants. We have yellow perch, bluegill, and bullhead catfish in our system, all edibles. And we're playing with our plants every day. And right now we're looking at native species strawberries. We have manumin, which is an indigenous local rice. I can see Alex nodding his head. Definitely in the Peterborough area, it's a big deal. So we work a lot with our indigenous mentors and colleagues. We've worked with James up at Curve Lake, and if you know that story, it's pretty amazing. So he actually gave us some of our rice seedlings that we're now growing in the aquaponic system. As far as we know, we're the only ones growing indoor manumin anywhere. So it's a pretty big deal for us. So yeah, next. So this became a very big project for us. I think right now Karen's going to get very mad at me because this is an area that we watched for a few years that pretty much wasn't used. This is such a nice sized chunk of land, but right behind where I'm taking that picture from is very, very much about a full play field. So the kids would run out that door, say, this is too small, and they go to the big field. And so we really wanted to make sure we weren't taking over space where kids would play. So this is on the middle school side. We really eyed this, and we did a lot of design work with our design kids, looked at sunlight. You can see that shadow there, looked at Google Earth, looked at what the possibilities were, different seasons, different times of year, lots of design aspect. And we started to design a farm. And we applied for a grant. This was a City of Toronto Live Green grant. I can see there's a couple of questions about grants, and a significant grant that we got. There was about 600 applicants, and we were one of the two that received it. We bid out professional grant writers, and we started building our farm. Next. And we designed and built everything you see. And right now we're at the point where we're about 7-8 years in. Just about everything that we grow is generally harvested from seeds from plants from the year before. Obviously, we're always experimenting with seeds that we do get or are given, but for the most part, our goal is to be as self-sustaining as possible. And we sell our produce to a local chef who is very, very much about the Toronto food scene. Chef Lorenzo Lizzato at George Restaurant. Far too expensive for me to go to. Maybe once a year I'll try to go, but really high end. And so for us, from an entrepreneurial global competency point of view, it's great for the kids to actually know that what they're doing is going towards a high end restaurant's plate. Next. So you can see some of our early sketches. This is all SketchUp. It's free software. It's available. And we just added this slide a couple days ago, the top one. This is our latest and greatest. That polytunnel is being literally delivered tomorrow. So we're taking our raised beds that we've been growing constantly. We're now looking at hopefully year-round production, or at least extending our seasons. It also means there's certain produce that we can do well with in the cold weather: Brussels sprouts, radicchios, a lot of greens. And so now we're looking at farming and prepping for farming right in the middle of the winter, which is great. I think you probably get a sense that we're outside all of the time, like all the time. And even more so, obviously, now with COVID. And we don't have slides of right now is all the outdoor classroom spaces that we're building for everybody in the school. And so if you were to see this 2 weeks from now, we'd have lots of slides of that as well. Next. So much of our local produce that we grow, it's quite lovely and lovable and tasty, and it looks great. And obviously, we do a lot with our students in photography classes and art classes and et cetera, et cetera. So it really is a cross-curricular approach, obviously an EcoSchools approach. Just watching people walk around and go through the gates and wander around and being attached to the middle school. It's just so amazing when you see classes that you don't even know are going to be in that space, and they've got clipboards in hands and they're doing some kind of a study or some kind of an identification for kids in an urban setting to sort of see where their food comes from and seasonality. And they sneak a few tastes of the cherry tomatoes, and that's just fine. So that's pretty great. Next. Yeah, so there's some of our produce. Bottom right, it's kind of an awkward picture, but that is actually in the summer, we run our students that get Ontario volunteer hours. So we run the farm right through the summer. I go on about twice a week. Mondays are delivery days, and Thursdays or Fridays are sort of maintenance and irrigation and weeding days. But that's a Monday delivery to the restaurant. And so we work from 8 to noon. I set my irrigation timers on at noon. So it's like, we have to get out of here. You're about to get wet. Sometimes they stick around just because it's refreshing. But like that would be a typical delivery that you'd see. And it's really high end. And we're doing everything from, you name the vegetable, we're doing it. But we're also doing like beautiful edible flowers and lots of presentation pieces. Upper left, that's really important. You're going to see that in a second. Those are our Haudenosaunee Mound Garden results, and that's a pretty spectacular thing that we're doing. So those are very traditional squash that we're raising in an incredibly traditional way. So you're going to see that in a minute as well. Next. This is a big deal. So this is in our farm now, and this was kind of a later progression. So we do a lot of things around progressions. We have students, and I love how Karen also talked about the generational aspect. So you get that in a school, right? I mean, it's not actually generations, but grade 9s to grade 12, it's a generation. And even more so, grade 8s coming in with the grade 8s or the grade 12s going out, that's a whole next wave. So legacy is very important to us. So we'll have projects where students are designing something that they will not build. They're designing something that another group of students will build. And as the students build that piece, we're already working on another design for the next group of students. So that legacy piece is very, very important. And it matters to us a lot. And so we're always handing that down. And Karen also mentioned community. So these kids live in this community and they walk by this school every day and they sit on those benches and they see the farm, and their parents and their grandparents and the seniors across the street and the senior center, they come and experience that space, and they treat our school like it's a park. It's quite amazing. So this kitchen, we've had that in there since, about 2015. We're not quite finished yet, but we're working on those cabinets right now. It's fully functioning, but the cabinets are also covered by ash from trees that were taken down because of the emerald ash borer, also mentioned by Karen. And those are all slabs from trees from TDSB sites. We do a lot of work with reclaimed lumber from trees that are from our own school sites or from city properties, Toronto Islands. So urban lumber salvage is very, very important to us. And we do a lot of forestry on site. Because we are so large, I've been lucky enough in my 20 years to plant more than 100 trees with my students. And so at the Don Mills CI middle school campus, we have more than 300 trees. Amazing for sort of field trips and identification practices. Next, please. And there's our amazing wood-fired oven. This was designed and built in Napoli, the home of great pizza. And we paid for that through 3 years of sales of our vegetables, our charcuterie boards, and our maple syrup that we make on site as well. So very entrepreneurial, and all the money goes right back into the program. And that's our squash, of course. Next. We do a lot of work with woodcraft, and this is actually the Maple Leaf Forever tree from Riverdale. We were asked to participate in that project, and we've made several pieces that are being used when we have special events with our indoor or outdoor kitchen in our farm for community events. And that's an ideal way, I think, to honor the Maple Leaf Forever tree. And we're making more and more of those pieces all the time. This was featured on CTV, actually, this group of projects. Next, please. Maple syrup made on site, tapped from our own trees. Tasty, tasty. Next. This is a lot of our Indigenous connections. So Alan Coley, if you're in a Toronto person, you might know Alan does a lot of work around with Evergreen Brickworks that we work with. And of course, that's James up at Curve Lake. And he's stirring some of the Manuman, the local wild rice. So Indigenous teachings, Indigenous knowledge, it's a very, very important part of what we do, and would not even attempt to explain some of these concepts unless I had knowledge keepers with me. And we've developed really strong relationships and friendships. And I think that's such an important part of what we need to do when we're working with our Indigenous local knowledge keepers, develop those relationships over time, and receive when you've earned it. I think that's what matters a lot. Next. And here we are building Haudenosaunee traditional mound gardens with Alan. This is probably one of the most humbling experiences I've ever had. Building it in a traditional way, challenging our students to find this technique on the internet. It doesn't exist. It's oral tradition only. And we are doing farming practices that are thousands of years old, and based upon the geography of the Don River and the flats above, there's a very good likelihood that these farming practices were used thousands of years ago on the same piece of land that we're on. And it's remarkable. So if you're in the Don Mills area, go by and see these. They're amazing. These are traditional Three Sisters gardens, but done the right way. These are underground systems first. We're not just raising dirt up in a mound. We are utilizing the resources that we have, that nature has given to us, and working with Indigenous knowledge keepers to do it properly. Next. So that's a beautiful harvest coming, and you've already seen some of the squash and pumpkins from there. So that's corn, beans, and squash. It's also tobacco. We're also raising strawberries and sunchokes. They're all absolutely amazing. Fish, ash, wood, soil, love, that's for sure. Next. Field trips. Yes, Karen, I know we want to get back to these. This is not just going on a walking excursion, which I think is one of the most amazing things that we get to do. We go in the Don Valley a lot, but when you build that trust, not only amongst your students, and they do great things for you because you trust them first, and they live up to that responsibility. Certainly Alex was talking about that, about Karen's approach. It makes it much easier when you do apply for these field trips and these overnights, because they've already proven themselves. If you respect students, they will respect you back. And I think that gets proven over and over again. Next. And here is a typical high school vineyard. Just a classic example of Pinot Noir, Cabernet Franc, Chardonnay, and Riesling, just the classic varieties you'd plant at a high school. This is actually typical of our urban approach, which is, what can we do with this little tiny strip of land that's not being used? We have 160 vines in there, and that upper picture, I shouldn't leave it in there, but I did, because that's the chaos it got to without the students. And so the students are so essential to keep this stuff together. But once you kind of recapture the moment, it's the mistakes, it's the tragedies, it's the problems, it's the oh-ohs that make the learning so much more powerful, because you get to reclaim it. And when the students are in charge of that, they know they've done something good because it just looks better. And when you get the result of fruit, what's better than that? Next. Speaking of fruit, we just planted this last year during the pandemic. During the summer, we got funding for this, another grant. The vineyard was a grant as well. This is our orchard. Every school has a strip of land right out front. We decided to plant 40 fruit trees with ours. Maybe you don't have enough room for 40. Maybe you can plant 20. Maybe you can plant 10. Maybe you can plant 6. Maybe you can plant 2. But you can plant some fruit trees. Great for studies, great for research, for students to figure out what will grow well in your area or not. Next. And this is our next endeavor. We've already started growing mushrooms. Outdoors and indoors, really working around our year-round philosophy. And if you haven't noticed, food is very important to us. We're very much about schools as a resiliency hub. So during the pandemic, we were actually able to feed a lot of our local families in extreme need with the produce from our farm during the summer. It was pretty spectacular. Next. And you might imagine we've got a fair bit of media attention as a result. CTV, Agritecture, TVO. Some of these links will be available to you through the resources, Alex. Yeah, thank you. So if you want to see these, let's say you want to try one of these things at your school, watch it, show it to your admin. So basically my job, I think, is to kick down doors for you. And don't think about doing everything as big a scale as this. Don't forget, I've been there 20 years. Don't forget, my programming is tech, so it's very hands-on. I've got the support of the students as well. But try to find some of these little beautiful golden nuggets. I just saw a quick comment about mushrooms. They would be excellent. Yes, it's a very small scale thing, and there's so much you can do with that. Next.
Is that it?
And that's it. Look at me.
Okay.
20 minutes on the nose.
Well, in short, thank you for such a fabulous presentation. We really are lucky here at Ecom to have not one, but two excellent presentations during the 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. time slot, nonetheless. My apologies.
Come on, man. Birthday.
My apologies for the technical difficulties earlier. Those resources of Dan's are now in the chat. And we have, okay, 5 minutes to dig into a few of these questions.
Shoot.
So let's see what we've got here. Okay, so first of all, a lot of these questions are people just praising the initiative.
Right.
Some folks.
And just like, you know, Karen gave her email, I think it is great. I should have done that. I know Karen and I both would be happy to take questions. You find us on our TDSB email accounts. I am Daniel Kunanec with the TDSB account, but please get contact with us. We'll ask a lot.
Gotcha. So we have a question here. Dan, you have an impressive and daunting project there. Where do you suggest starting as a teacher who is not in tech?
Yeah, so first of all, I think Karen mentioned as well, that recognize what you have already. What's your thank you, Karen. What's your interest area? Where do you feel most comfortable? And what resources do you have? So you really want to start by setting yourself up for success immediately. Feels good. And it shows your admin that you're being responsible. Yeah, try to pick and choose around what your strengths are. It's also really important on the next one to sort of step out of your comfort zone a bit. Do I know anything about growing mushrooms? Nope, not at all. Do my students? Nope. Do they know that I don't know? Yep. So make sure they know that you're on the journey with them. And I think that's really matters. And I mentioned mistakes and how important those are. I surround myself with experts. I ask experts. I have, you know, some knowledge, maybe more than some in some areas, certainly less than others. But be honest with yourself and be honest with your students. I think that's the most important thing.
Absolutely. So we have another question here about grant seeking and working that into the curriculum. Have you ever tried that?
Yeah, it's a big part of what we do. I think curriculum for any course is loose enough. You can fit just about anything in if you want to. Let's face it. So find that area of approach, professionalism, entrepreneurship. I think look at the, oh my gosh, there's so many ways to look at it. Look at your own board's dictates. What are they trying to accomplish? Use your board's words for your own benefit. What are they trying to do? What are the global competencies that you're working on? There's so many ways you can approach it and justify it. Then the next thing obviously is to find the grants that are available that apply to you. TD Friends of the Environment is a great one to start with, and they're very, very kind and very helpful. And you know, so go for those ones. I think that's the best way to go. But check with your own municipality. I mean, obviously we can find things in Toronto. It's the biggest city in Canada, probably the biggest bureaucracy. The TDSB is the biggest bureaucracy. If we can do that in Toronto, you can do it anywhere in Canada.
Amazing. I have another question here that's just my own. I'm curious, because you've obviously been very ambitious with how you've been using the school grounds.
Yeah.
Have you had any issues with zoning or like the city coming knocking at your door?
Oh, we that's a big part of our plan, right? I mean, as a design professional, that's my background. That's one of the hoops you jump through. You don't build a deck in your backyard without checking into permits. You don't do any of these things. Our kitchen design, for instance, changed probably 20, 30 times because of what we'd hoped for and what we could do because of not needing a permit. I mean, it would look very different if it was the wish list kitchen, right? But those are the realities, and students need to sort of recognize that. Doesn't mean you can't pursue that design as part of what you're doing, but you know, as a result, you kind of tweak it, and that's a good reality check for a student to sort of recognize that. And I think it sets them up better when they're trying to buy their first house. So yeah, these are good soft skills, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I won't tell any of my Italian uncles about zoning and deck building. They tend to do what they want.
Don't even. I might have a few extra grapevines. You let me know. I know.
I know it's at 8 o'clock. We have one tiny little question here. Other than the walking excursion form, what paperwork do you have to file or have on hand for informal field trips off-site?
Karen, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah, I just typed in the chat.
You already
I usually just, it's really important to know how many you have of kids, because you always got to bring them all back. But in TDSB, we do have, like, it's a board-wide form called Walking Excursion Form, and it's signed only once. I don't even have that on hand. I don't even check. I tell the office, it's Freedom Friday, I'm going. And they're like, okay, have fun, bring them all back. And I just pop my head back in on the way back. And I know TDSB, like if you're going on a field trip, there's sort of a more detailed form with like medical issues or like more phone numbers and things like that. That's probably a good idea to bring as well. I don't, to be honest, always think of it, but it probably is a good thing to just have on hand. Or even like if you take a picture of it and stick it in your phone or something, then you'll always have it.
That's awesome, Karen.
Well, we officially have hit 8:00 p.m. Thank you so much, Karen and Dan, for your wonderful presentations and great Q&A. Some really inspiring stuff happening in TDSB. Folks in attendance, thanks so much for joining in. And I also know Karen and Dan shared their emails in their presentations. So if you have any further questions, it seems like they'd be happy to follow up later on. Thanks so much, Alexa, for keeping my head on straight during the technical difficulties. And yeah, everyone have a safe night, and we'll see you tomorrow at the rest of Econ.